The village is a model for aging in place. The villages represent about 350 communities throughout the United States and 4 countries. And it is a organically grown, community-based, volunteer-first model for helping those, older Americans age in their community.
They're so helpful and friendly and accommodating, and they work so hard to try to find you a ride. I'm very impressed with the office people first.
It's been great with this program. I wish in our country we have this service. It does a lot of help to the people.
There are many people here who do not have cars, and they're really isolated. To be able to go shopping, to go for a doctor's appointment, it's, what do they do?
The challenge is finding the right volunteer, getting them trained, and setting the parameters when you're dealing with some of the older Americans, so some of our older members who get quite chummy with some of our volunteers. First of all, it's always about setting the expectation, both for the member and for the volunteer. It starts at orientation. It starts with, sitting down, doing the background checks, and then talking about how to be a volunteer and what to expect. The expectation is not only a verbal, interaction, but it's also in our handbook, how to request volunteer service, how to fulfill it, the communication to the member. Lots of my members would have caller ID and they would say, well, I'm just going to call the volunteer directly and bypass the office. And it's important to enable our volunteers to say no, and say, I would love to be kind, kill them kindness, but say, I'd love to help you, but all these requests have to go through the office. So why don't you call the office and see if we can coordinate. If a service request is not facilitated through the office, then it becomes an insurance issue, because you're outside of that initial request. Telling our members and an education to our members and to our volunteers and reiterating and saying, we've got to do this the right way, and lean heavily on the office and the insurance policies that we have in place. Second, we do give our volunteers the latitude to make a decision if they have the time. We say most certainly if you have the time, and we give an example like if you've taken a member to a doctor's appointment and the doctor has given them a new medication, if you have time to drop that medication off to the pharmacy, if you don't, just call us at the office and tell the member one of us, the staff or another volunteer, will go and get that medicine, so they're not without their their medications. It's again enabling the volunteers to have a kindness. They're already doing a great service, but being able to separate and say no when you need to say no. When we take in a service request, we ensure that the member does not get the volunteer's telephone number. So the process is a service request is, given out. A volunteer takes the ride, the transportation. We call the member and say, oh, Mary Smith is your volunteer tomorrow. She's going to be calling you ahead of time, and you can talk about, your, what time, verify, confirm, and that way the member doesn't get the volunteer's telephone number, and it helps the volunteers feel more comfortable the next time to be able to take more, volunteer opportunities on without feeling, threatened that a member's going to get really needy and want that particular volunteer. And we also ask our members, do you have any other, requests for this volunteer while you're out, because they're just taking you to the medical appointment. So if we know habitually which members, need groceries a weekly, or they, get their hair done, or, whatnot. So it's structure, it's balance, and it's information that we constantly have to give out to them, and reminders. If you feel uncomfortable about something, opening the door and letting the volunteer call us and say, Mrs. Smith was a little unsteady on her feet today, and I'm just a little worried about it. Or she was, it looked obvious, and this was a big one for our volunteers. Mrs. Smith had obviously a fall. She told me she had a fall, and you might want to, follow up on it. It makes the volunteers more comfortable and not uneasy going home and knowing something and not saying something. We're non-medical, so if somebody's confused, a volunteer doesn't feel comfortable about dropping somebody off at a doctor's appointment if they're going to be like a flight risk or confused about which doctor they're going to. So it's super important to maintain a healthy open door policy with the volunteers. If anything this pandemic taught us was that we need to take care of each other. We got away from that concept neighbor helping neighbor, and I think the village model really shows in great strength how to involve the whole community. I think all of us experienced during this pandemic isolation, and it's systemic with older adults. But let me tell you, during the pandemic, we all got a taste of it. We all got a taste of isolating, loneliness, being separated from family, but it's to being able to connect. And I think our volunteers are pivotal in that respect.
The people who take the phone calls are always kind and polite and try to help you with everything.
They have always found me a driver, and the drivers have been very accommodating and friendly.
I have never had any complaint with my riders who ride me, and I try to, when they're sick and they say, I don't know how I'm gonna get there, I did this, and so right away I say the Shepherd Center.
They do their best to find you a ride. And the drivers are so eager to volunteer and help. They have never had a problem finding a ride for me.
It's a wonderful program. It's very useful. People like me, people doesn't have cars.
I've never been one to try to depend on people to do things for me. So it was hard at first, but then God kind of showed me that you got to do this.
Absolutely, yes. I would recommend people to go to use the service. I have mentioned it to a few people that don't have a car, that they don't drive, and they depend on family, because it gives you a lot of independence and a lot of freedom.
The help is there, but you have to take the action to get the help. It's there. It's always there.
Thank you so much, and it's because the center takes me to the doctor appointments time when I need to go. Otherwise, I don't know what I'd be doing.
It's a lifesaver. I couldn't do it without them. Otherwise, I mean, I have to take a cab, and you know how it is. Yeah, so it's wonderful.